Welcome to another edition of Mile High Hockey. Will Peterson with you as always. Joined today by a special guest, my good friend Drew Spivak, the executive producer at 104.3 The Fan. Drew, I think the secret is out. 2 goalie trades may have saved the Colorado Avalanche's season. You bring in Mackenzie Blackwood. 10 days before that, you bring in Scott Wedgewood. Just feels like the vibes are so much higher around this hockey team right now.
It's ridiculous, and it's noticeable whenever you hear Jared Bednar talk, Nathan MacKinnon talk, guys like that, because they always just comment about what a different vibe there is in the room now. And I don't know what that says about the former goaltenders that were here. I think we have a pretty good idea if you kind of read between the lines a little bit. But it's awesome to see the way that this team goes out and plays in front of these guys now. And you have confidence every single night that Blackwood, Wedgewood, whichever one is in the net, you have confidence that, guess what? You don't have to be great defensively every single night to keep the puck out of the net and give yourself a chance to win. And it's way different from what it was before. I mean, I don't know about you, but I look at it and say, when Georgiev was in there, when it was, whoever else, name your goalie over the last couple of years, you always kind of had the feeling of like, well, the shot might go in every time there was a shot out. Now, it's almost a surprise for me when the puck does go in the net.
Yeah, and I think it's a surprise for the players, too, because you mentioned it. There was this feeling, and you can almost point to these 2 games. Like the on-and-in disaster in Tampa was the last game he ever played for the Avs. And Georgiev giving up the 4 in Buffalo, and they're down 4-0. And here comes Scott Wedgewood to bail him out, and the Avs win 5-4. Kind of those line-in-the-sand moments of, I think the players ran out of patience. I think the head coach ran out of patience, and clearly the front office was over it. And it's like Chris McFarland and Joe Sakic deserve so much credit because it's really hard to trade 1 goalie in the NHL. To trade 2 in a 10-day span and be getting these kind of returns, let me run these stats by you real quick. Mackenzie Blackwood is 4-1 with a .940 save percentage and 1.82 goals against average. Scott Wedgewood is 4-2 with a .932 save percentage, 1.93 goals against average, and a shutout. Drew, the first number being a 9 on a save percentage, we haven't been there in forever, and not only are they both there, they're both comfortably there. On paper, these look like brilliant moves.
Absolutely. I mean, and what's the elite number as a goaltender that you want to have for a season? Like .920 and above. That's considered an elite goaltender. Now, nobody's going to expect that Mackenzie Blackwood's going to stay above, .940, .950, .960, somewhere in that range. But if he could even just be a .910, .915 save percentage for the rest of the season, you look at what this team could do with that in goal, the possibilities feel endless. But it's just awesome because I've always thought, listen, all you have to do to be a good team with this roster in front of you is give up 3 goals or less every single night. If you can give up 3 or less, you are going to be in really good shape. Now, Mackenzie Blackwood started, 5 games with this team?
Yeah, 4-1.
He's given up 2 goals 4 times. He's given up 1 goal 1 time. And guess what? They're 4-1 over that stretch. So all you got to do is keep the puck out of the net 3 times or less, and you're going to be just fine. And it's great to have the confidence knowing that not only do you have one guy, you've got another guy in Scott Wedgewood, which I'll be honest, I wasn't totally sure about Scott Wedgewood because what I've seen from him in the past, he's okay in spurts, but let's be honest, he's a career backup goaltender.
Yep.
And so you don't know what you're going to get on a night-in, night-out basis. But to be fair, he's never played along with Mackenzie Blackwood. Neither one of them ever had this kind of a roster, this kind of a defense in front of them, night in and night out. And it shows, and it's just great to have the confidence that knowing, hey, no matter which guy you put in the net, you're going to be fine.
Well, it does feel like, both these guys are rejuvenated in the sense, too, of if you're Blackwood going into this year, you're not winning anything with the Sharks.
No.
If you're Wedgewood, the Predators, they've made some splashy free agent moves, but I don't think anyone in Nashville is expecting a Stanley Cup this season. But the Stanley Cup does feel like it's back on in Denver. I'm not saying to plan the parade, but you could map the route. Drew, they won the Cup 2 years ago, or I guess 3 years ago at this point in the summer of 2022. And the last 2 years, we've sort of talked about the Cup, but I don't know if anyone deep in their heart with Georgiev felt like that was a real possibility. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but it is New Year's Eve. We're in a mode of celebration. I genuinely think with this tandem in net, they can be just as good as Kemper and Francouz, if not even better. I think the Avalanche now have a really legitimate shot to win the Stanley Cup this season.
I feel night and day better than I did, let's say, even a month ago.
Yeah.
When we started the month of December, I was like, well, maybe if this team can figure out the goaltending situation, they might have a chance if they can get healthy. Well, guess what? Now they're healthy. They're as close to good health as they're going to be maybe for the rest of the season. And now with this goaltending tandem and net, it actually does feel like this team could legitimately make a deep run in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, we got to wait and see because we don't know what we're going to get from Mackenzie Blackwood once we get into April and May and hopefully June.
Doesn't have postseason experience.
He has none. But I feel better with him in that realm than I did with Alexander Georgiev and Justus Annunen. And so if this team can stay healthy and get on a track where they're scoring on the power play, they're killing penalties, which, by the way, guess how you kill penalties? Great goaltending.
Good goaltending.
And you're getting it now. And, one of the things that encourages me about this little stretch here is that it doesn't even feel like they're playing at like 100% yet. They're still trying to figure things out. They're still trying to get all their guys back in the lineup. They're trying to figure out piece by piece like how they can get things going again. They're still not playing all that well, and yet they've rolled off, 4 in a row? 6 out of 7, something like that. I mean, they're playing good enough hockey to win because they're getting the quality goaltending. So, yeah, I don't think without a question it feels like they can make a legit Stanley Cup run.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 4-game winning streak. They have Winnipeg tonight down there at Ball Arena, little New Year's Eve celebration. We got good news yesterday. Jonathan Drouin will be back. Josh Manson has returned. The only two we're waiting on are Miles Wood and then sort of this imaginary Gabriel Landeskog carrot that is still out there on the stick. But it does feel like, and Mike Evans, who normally sits in that chair, has said, hey, he thinks they can win 20 of 25 before the Four Nations face off. And I kind of, ooh. But it does feel like, Drew, we may look up at the standings when that Four Nations face off comes. And the Avalanche, if they can stay healthy, and we're knocking on wood because that's been a problem, all of a sudden they could be right there in the Central Division if they can reel off one of those 10 of 11, 13 of 15 type streaks.
See, I'm glad I'm not the only one that thought Mike Evans was crazy when he said the 20 out of 27, especially when we looked at the schedule, go game by game, and you're like, wow, that is a really tough stretch of hockey before that February break. But I think he's spot on. If they keep playing the way they're playing, if they can stay healthy, and health is always going to be the key with this team, and what do they do at the trade deadline? What do you do with Mikko Rantanen? What happens with this team if you're sitting there and let's say we get to the Four Nations face-off and you are first or second in the Central, you're feeling good about where things are going, you still don't have Mikko Rantanen signed to an extension. What do you do at that point if you're Chris McFarland? Because you got to feel like, all right, we put ourselves in a position to chase the Stanley Cup. We've got this guy who's going to make $14 million on the open market. How do we approach this? How do you approach this at the trade deadline, and where do you go with this? That's, to me, is going to be like one of the biggest questions over the next couple months with this roster.
Oh, it's huge. It's a massive question mark without a doubt, and no one wants to see Mikko leave, but the only way it'd be okay if Mikko leaves is if he's got a second Stanley Cup ring on his finger.
Yeah.
Because if you don't trade him, you get nothing for him, and you come up short, and he walks. That's going to be a lot of uncomfortable questions for McFarland to answer. But the good news right now is the vibes are high. The vibes are tremendously high with the Avs. Winnipeg tonight at Ball Arena. They will look to catch the Jets in the standings. It starts tonight. Drew, real quick, as we wrap up on this Winnipeg game, it does sort of feel like you owned them in the playoffs last year. If you beat them tonight, you kind of send another message to the Jets of like, you guys had a great start to the regular season, but we're still here.
Yeah, Winnipeg's come down to earth a little bit as well. I mean, they got such a hot start in the season. I know they still lead the league in goals for this year. They were second, I believe, in goals against. But the way that they play against the Winnipeg Jets, the way that they kind of dominated that series last season, you got to feel good going in this thing, even though Winnipeg has won 4 in a row, but guess what? So have the Avalanche. So I think the thing I'm most looking forward to tonight is, guess what? We get to have a great goaltending matchup. You're going to have Connor Hellebuck. You're going to have Mackenzie Blackwood. You could see these guys go at it again, maybe in April, May, something like that. So it's going to be really exciting to kind of see how this forms. And, one of the things I'm looking forward to tonight as well is that you have your full complement of power play guys in the lineup for tonight. I think Corey Masisak of the Denver Post had tweeted out that this is the first time this entire season that the Avalanche will have all 10 of their guys that they want on the power play units. For a team that struggled on the power play. Yeah.
Wow.
Which we're at game 38. I mean, it's crazy to even think that that's a possibility, but love to see what it's going to look like tonight. Sounds like Casey Mittelstadt is going to be playing on the fourth line. Hopefully they can get him going again. If you get him going, then everything's going to be great.
What a way to flip the calendar to 2025. The Avs are finally healthy. The goaltender situation is seemingly figured out, and a Stanley Cup run feels like a legit possibility. Drew, thanks for hopping on today.
Thanks
I appreciate it. Yeah, no
Yeah.
problem. Mike Evans will be back on Thursday, as will I, and we'll see you for another edition of Mile.